Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in. I'm Robbie.
I'm Jason.
And welcome to the table. So excited. I got Jason chuckling. I did like a nice, before we got started, it almost like, you're like standing behind the curtain before you walk out into the room.
Love it. It's inspirational.
Yeah. That's what we're here for. Jason, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, man. I'm wet because it's raining. Is it Florence? Hurricane Florence, Tropical Storm Florence, whatever that big storm is that's moving up is hitting us. Thankfully, it's not bad, but we're filming a lot outside, and I'm not in the videos, but I'm catching behind the scenes stuff. And so I've been standing in rain all day today. So I'm just kind of wet and cold. And I don't typically get wet and cold, but I'm wet and cold from just being out in the rain for around this morning and around this afternoon. How you doing, bro?
Hey, doing swell. We had it as it passed over us. So I had like 3 or 4 days where I couldn't film for the disc golf side of content that I make. And so I'm going out of town on Thursday, heading to Halloween Horror Nights down in Orlando. So really, really excited. This will be my second year going. I am like such a scaredy cat. So it's so funny that I enjoy going to Halloween Horror Nights. I've told Lindsay it's a FOMO thing. Like it without a doubt, it is I want to be where the people are, and my friends are going on this trip. My wife is not joining us for this year because she is with child, and so going to a theme park and getting jump scared seems like a really bad idea because she's like 6 months pregnant at this point. Yeah. Oof. That's crazy. That is real. Yeah. So Jason, what have you been playing lately?
That is crazy. I'm thinking I'm a little jealous because you're going to Halloween Horror Nights. We haven't done Halloween Horror Nights yet, though we did Hallow Scream at Busch Gardens last year, which was fun. And that's my goal, is hopefully in the next couple of years, us go back from here, go down, and me take the entire family down to Halloween Horror Nights because all of my kids would love that. So hopefully one day we'll do that. I'm actually going to be at Disney. You know this, but I'll remind you, like, you literally leave Orlando and I get there like the same day or the next day, and we're going to Disney, me and Elizabeth, no kids, with my friend Joey and his fiance Joey, who got me into board gaming all those years ago. So we're not going to do too much gaming while we're there, but we'll probably talk a little about gaming because we'll be at Disney all day. So before I jump into what I played lately, I do want to say thanks as well. So last week at the very end of the podcast, I say last week, our last podcast, because 2 weeks ago, talked about some coasters that one of our listeners had given us, Nick. Well, Nick also is a fan of the Foundation disc golf, the disc golf side of the house with Robbie C and Foundation. He also brought everybody a care package, and one of those things was some flavored soda from Kentucky. He's from Kentucky, I think. And so it's been sitting in my fridge since Worlds. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start, each time I do a game thing, I'm going to drink one of these sodas. So I had the cherry one when I played the game we're talking about today. And then I'm having orange cream right now. It's really good. Thank you, Nick. It is, it's actually very good. I don't think I would, I sweet, Robbie and I were talking about this off camera. It's sweet, and I like sweet stuff for sure. And I don't think, I'm a grape person in general, but orange is always my second favorite, and this orange is really good. There's also a ginger and citrus. I'm not a ginger guy, but I like citrus, so I bet that combination would be good. And then there's a straw melon, which sounds great. Never had a strawberry or melon flavored soda, but it sounds great. So anyway, so thank you again. Thank you again, Nick, for that. We appreciate that. So it's actually been BGA notwithstanding, because I play games on BGA every single day. I play a lot of asymmetric stuff. So if I discount that, I had to pull up BG stats, Robbie, because I have not played the game. The first game I'm going to talk about is Calico, but it had been almost a month. You and I and Elizabeth played Sorcerer City on August 19th. And my next recorded play was September 14th. So almost a month without playing a traditional board game, which is possibly the longest in BG stats ever, if I'm going to be honest. I had to scroll back for a while to see. But I'm playing on BGA every day, at least a move or two. So I'm getting my fill. And then when at the end of your time here, we were still playing the Crew. So we got some tabletop gaming in. But the first game I'll talk about is Calico. It's actually the very first game me and Robbie ever played together. He had driven all day, and I said, let's give you a really hard, crazy, crunchy game that's going to break your mind. And that's not why I did Calico, but I don't know if I've even played it much since then. Calico is a tile laying game in which you can place your tiles anywhere within the board. It's a dual layered board. So unlike Cascadia, where your plateau, your tableau can just go anywhere, In Cascadia, it's within a board, so you're sitting it down in there, and your tiles can go anywhere, right? But the key there is, so there's freedom. I'm just placing a tile and taking a tile. The entire game is placing a tile from your hand. You'll have two. They're private. You'll place one, then you take another tile. That's it. There's literally no other actions in the entire game. It's placing a tile and taking a tile. But within there, you have 3 different scoring goals. The tiles are basically patches on a quilt. They're colored and patterned. So if you get 3 colors together, you get a button for a bonus in-game scoring. Each game, there's different requirements for how the patterns may match. And if you match the patterns correctly, you could get a bonus, put a little cat on there. And then you also have 3 scoring goals within the board. I won't go into the details of those because we may talk about Calico one day because they get really crunchy. But they get really not complicated, but varied. But that's the crunchiness in there. There is no restriction on where you can play, but to score well, there's plenty of constrictions on there because you need to have your colors together. You need to have your patterns together or you're going to get blitzed. And it's definitely not a socially, it's not a social game in that you're talking a lot because you are so focused on your board. It's not a game I would recommend playing with folks you're just trying to have an easy night with, or at least that game. Understand if you go in that game, you're not talking to each other a lot unless it's like, hey, you just took the tile I wanted. You stink. Now I got to try something else. Or you're praying at the end, please let it be a perfect tile. No. Please be the perfect tile. No. It happened to me like 4 times in a row. I could not get a pink tile out. 2-player game, less luck there with the colors coming out. Elizabeth would have beat me anyway, but I wouldn't have lost by as much if I just could have got a pink tile at the end. So the first one was Calico. It is a fantastic game, but even hardcore gamers talk about how crunchy it is, right? I love the crunchiness of Calico, but you're not sitting at the board socializing between turns because between turns you're thinking about your turn. And if I put this here, it's this, put this here, and it's literally just a little hexagon. Fantastic. I mean, I love Calico. What can you remember of it? Because I know you were a little sleep deprived because it was so late. What do you remember of Calico, Robbie?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely remember thinking, okay, so this is my first trip up here where I'm staying with Jason and Elizabeth. This is the first game we're playing. Okay, let's have a good vibe. Like, here we go. And also, in my circle down here, I win probably like 50% of the games we play. Like my brain adjusts to the strategies, but also we're the ones introducing people to a lot of games quite often. Like Ryan and Abby come over and they play with us. Abby is super good at picking up games right off the bat. Like I would say Abby is picking up, she's probably winning half the games we're playing as we're introducing people to it. Like she's really good. Ryan is not that guy. Like he is definitely someone who is going to miss it the first time through. Now, second time through, he's ready to go. Like he doesn't do the strategy I do with y'all of where I'm like, I need to know what a good winning score is, and I'm just going to pick something and run with it. And if I get blasted, oh well. And so I remember sitting down and being like, okay, let's see how good these gamers are. Game on. And I got blown out of the water, and I felt so rude because of exactly what Jason was saying. I'm like, they're letting me stay in their house for a whole week, and I'm just not even talking because I'm like so hyper focused on this game. I feel so rude right now. And then I got obliterated. I remember calling Lindsay that night and being like, Lindsay, these people are so good at games. Like, I don't know that I'm ever going to win a game at this house. Like, I think it's impossible. And
that's
so, yeah, it was super crunchy.
In hindsight, it probably wasn't the best game. I thought about it because of the easiness, and I love Calico, but again, the cognitive load of Calico is miles high compared to Cascadia, whose true cognitive load is a little bit up there. But I'll do it a quick aside, and Robbie and I talked about this when he was here, but so I have a great app called BG Stats. Anybody can get it. I think it costs a couple bucks for your integration with BoardGameGeek.com, but you can track all your games, and I've been tracking games for 4 years, and so Robbie now is in BG Stats is the 3rd, 6th, 7th behind me. He has the 7th most played games. And 99% of these games are just me, or I'm in the game. Some of them I'm not, but I tracked other people's. So Robbie has played, I have played 62 games with Robbie's. 62 plays of games, right? Not 62 different games, but 62 plays of games. And in those 62 games, Robbie has a 22% winning percentage. So not terrible. Almost 1 out of every 4 games, he wins. Whereas my winning percentage is 40%. So, and I think Ryder's is 41. So of course Ryder has more than me. So, and Elizabeth is 34.
But Ryder's played less of those.
Ryder, correct. I have in a lot of mine, And to be fair, a lot of mine are solo plays because I used to track my solo games as well. So I have over 1,000 plays. Elizabeth has 789. Ryder has 418. So he has less than half of my plays. Robbie has 62. It'll be a long time before he catches Hannah. Hannah's my next one up. And then Christopher Mandy, of course, those are the folks we played the most games with. So anyway, to be the first game is fun. You know, it's not quite 2 years, but it's a little less than 2 years that we've been playing games now. And 62 plays in 2 years is still in less than 2 years is still quite high. And that doesn't count. I don't have a single copy of The Crew in there. Think how many times we played The Crew, Robbie. Like I don't capture The Crew in BG stats. So just think about that. So the second game I just played last night. So we have Foundation has some guys in town filming some other stuff. Hunter had a game night last night. And so we went through kind of the traditional games. We did some Green Team Wins and we did some Wits and Wagers. And then we ended with Bang the Dice Game. So we've talked about Bang the Dice Game with Foundation and with Brody before. So it's not quite as epic as the previous game. But what I will tell you this is, for those who don't know Bang the Dice Game, it's a hit and roll game in which you're rolling Yahtzee-style dice to eliminate other players. That's the whole goal of the game. If the sheriff is the last one standing or the sheriff and deputies are the last one standing, he wins, he or she. If the renegade is the last one standing entirely, he wins. He has to be the only one. The outlaws win if the sheriff is eliminated, but it doesn't matter about the deputies or renegade. There's 4 different characters: outlaws, renegade, sheriff, and deputy. And so if you're the renegade, you have the hardest time. The odds are stacked against you because literally everybody else has to get eliminated. And we randomly dealt out the cards and I was the renegade. So I knew immediately I'm not going to win this game. So I'm like, I'm going to take down at least one person with me before I go. And essentially, because it's a game that with most hidden roll games, or almost all of them, I don't want to say all of them, most of them, table talk is encouraged, right? You can tell the truth all you want, or you can lie through your teeth all you want. It doesn't matter. It's however you want to play the game. And again, our epic game at USDGC was about, Brody lying and saying he was a deputy when he wasn't. And it was fantastic. We replayed that last night. It was awesome. But I, from the very first time, Hunter was the sheriff. So the sheriff has revealed himself. No one else to. Hunter was sheriff. I was like, and as soon as Hunter revealed himself, I was like, Hunter, do not eliminate me. I'm a deputy. I'm here to help. I'm here to help you, man. We're going to win this right here. And so I was selling it hard that I was the deputy. And then Gary, who we talked about earlier, Gary said, well, he knows some gaming as well. So he said, well, I'm a deputy as well. And I'm like, okay, cool. All right. Me and Gary, Hunter, it's us 3. We're going to win this game. Sold it. Spoiler, I was the renegade. I already said that, right? No one else knows I'm the renegade. So someone beside me was like, but I'm the deputy. And I from the moment, as soon as he said it that way, I'm like, I feel bad for this kid because he's going to get eliminated early. And sure enough, he just didn't know how to sell it. And I sold it so well. And no one at that table thought I was not the deputy, because I wasn't above and beyond, but I was sincere. And I said it from the beginning. And that was my point was like, guys, as soon as we sat down and I flipped over my card and saw Hunter was sheriff, I told him I was a deputy. So he knew not to attack me. Right. And as soon as Hunter eliminated Larkin looked at me and goes, you mean reveal the card? I said, you reveal the card. He flipped it over and it's a deputy. I was like, well, I guess that means I'm the only deputy remaining, Hunter. They knew I wasn't the deputy at that point, by the way. And so, and it got back to me and I refused. It was great. It was a fun game. I got eliminated after that, but I was like, I'm going to take one person out with me because I'm not going to survive as the renegade. I'm very happy that I had convinced Hunter and everyone else at the table that I was the deputy. So I was able to get him to kill out one of his own people. So spoiler, the outlaws won again because the outlaws, the way that it's set up by pure coincidence, the 3 outlaws were side by side. And so they weren't really attacking each other, and Hunter got eliminated. So the game was over, but I played Bang the Dice Game. It's still a fun game. It's hard because the guys we played last night, somewhat hardcore gamers who are overthinking it, right? And I don't blame them. They're like, okay, they rolled, and Bang is not a game where you do this and you look around and you think, unless you're being dramatic. They weren't being dramatic. They were just trying to think about what to do. Not their fault, but eventually it got going. They saw how the rest of us were doing it because Brody knew how to play. I knew how to play. Gary knew how to play, and Hunter knew how to play. So as soon as they rolled their die, they're already divvying out and taking the actions, right? And because my experience of Bang, with people who know it, it's a fast-paced game, because once you know it, you're rolling die, boom, I'm gonna take you, let's go, and we go. So Bang the Dice Game, it was on my top 10 party games. I still love Bang the Dice Game. It's one I'll never get rid of. It's every hidden roll game. It's all about, you got to have that person. And I'm so proud of you, Jason, for someone who said I can't sell a hidden roll game, for you getting in there, hanging with Brody and selling it, man. Yeah. That is like one of the reason that I love One Night Ultimate Werewolf is my favorite, is because it's like,
I just lean into depending on which game I'm playing, I'm going to, regardless of whatever card I have in front of me, I am going to say, all right, everybody, I just want to go and let you know I'm the troublemaker.
Yep.
I know you're not going to believe it, but I'm the troublemaker, and I switch those two people's cards. Because on the rare circumstances that I am the troublemaker and I just get to lean into it even harder, like it's so fun. Then like halfway through, you're just like, by the way, I wasn't the troublemaker.
Right. Exactly.
I'm just a town citizen. Like It's just, I'm sorry.
I see because of the table, I knew I needed to do that. And so that was good, but it still doesn't change the fact that you were definitely built to do hidden roll games, and I have to be turned on and into place as I was the right frame of mind to run with it. And last night I just, because what helped is I had been running games all night. So I just got in that groove because I ran Green Team Wins, right? And then we had 8 people for Wits and Wagers, but only 7 people could play. So I just ran that game. And so I was in running game mode. And so I was in performance mode, for lack of a better term, right? Because I'm performing by leading the games. And we started the second game, and Hunter's like, of Wits and Wagers, he goes, Jason, I didn't even realize you weren't playing. I was like, it's only a 7-player game. It's good. I have fun playing. I have fun doing this. And so I guess I'd gotten the performer Jason had been turned on, and so I was ready for bang. So,
yeah. Realistically, I wonder, like, you could probably do, if you just use like quarters or something as your like free bets. I'm sure, like, if everyone's winning, you would run out of like chips eventually. But I feel like you could push.
It's the answer. You'd have to change the odds on the answers because there's only 7 spots where answers go. Because I had the same thought before I went. I was like, could we do it's really the answers. The money, you could work out the money. But you'd have to change the odds and maybe go to a 6-to-1 odd on each end. Which you could do. If you had 9 people, you could totally do that. And you may run out of money, but it worked just fine.
Yeah.
But the odd number of 8 actually isn't. Yeah.
Makes it real tough. Yeah.
Yep.
2 games I've been playing lately. One of them is called Hive. The one we had is called Hive Carbon. Jason and I Jason knows the game Hive, but when I said Hive Carbon, because that's what's on the bag, we couldn't find a difference between the two of them. But my friend Ryan that I mentioned, the Hive, he let me borrow for this. And so I actually took it to trivia and played it while we were at trivia. So Hive Carbon, the best way I can describe it is imagine chess, but with bugs and no board. So super fascinating. I am in I'll talk about this because it affects both of my games. I am someone who I would love to be a chess guy. I would love to be a chess guy. I have an obsessive personality when it comes to hobbies and games, especially. And so I just know that if I get into chess, I've had a couple chess phases in my life, and I legitimately can't sleep because I get like super bad migraines because I cannot stop playing chess mentally. Yeah. And so I'm just like running chessboards in my head at all times. The Queen's Gambit, I never thought other people struggled with this until I saw the Queen's Gambit and she's like laying in bed and she's playing chess on the ceiling. That 100% is me when it comes to it. So Hive Carbon, or Hive in general, you have bugs, and they're on these little like hexagons, I believe, because there's 6 sides. Yeah. Yep. Hexagon. So there are these hexagons, and you have a queen bee that the goal of the game is to surround the other players. It's a 2-person game, surround the other person's queen with your bugs. Now, there are a multitude of bugs available that have different abilities, like worker ants that can move all the way around the hive to another edge of the hive. And then you have spiders that move 3 spaces. You have grasshoppers that move in a straight line and hop everything and go to the other side of a straight line. And it's hexagon. So like the board is warping in like a really cool shape the whole time. Now the really sick part is that you can't separate the hive into 2 hives. So if one bug is like connecting the hive, you can't move it because that would create 2 separate hives. Yep. So you can trap opponent pieces by doing this. There are also expansions that create like there are expansions. I forget what the other bugs are called, but there's other bugs that get added in that mosquitoes are one of them. But like one of the bugs is a beetle that can actually climb up on top of other tiles and move around that. And when the beetle's on top of that tile, it can't move. And it also functions as whatever color that is. So in the game we played, I asked like, can the beetle jump on top of the queen bee? And they were like, yeah, absolutely. So I was able to get my beetle on top of my friend's queen bee, so it couldn't move. So then I just started swarming it with the other stuff, and then eventually moved my beetle off to an edge, and boom, it was surrounded. So like it's really fascinating. It's definitely a game that would fit in like a quiver. And this is where like Jason, this is where Ryan talked about it, is he was like, I could throw this under the seat of my car and we're going to a brewery. We're going to a restaurant. We're going to almost exactly what James mentioned in terms of what they do with King Domino, because they have a family. For Ryan and Abby, they don't have any kids. So this is like a perfect game for them to have like, oh, we went out to eat. We can play this. You just throw it on the table. Super simple. You said you've heard of Hive before. Have you seen it played any, or is this like you just seen it off in the distance kind of a deal?
No, it's more like I've just seen it in the distance, and I know there in the board game world a lot of people like it because it is not basic, but it's simple. Because you're just moving, that you have some restrictions on how you can place the tiles, but then the strategy comes in deeper. Some of the games talk about it that way because of the simplicity of it. And I think there's even Hive Pocket, which is but this one's clearly small enough to take into a quiver, but there's even a Hive Pocket that has it even smaller. But it's one that I would happily try. I don't like those kind of games. I'm not a chess guy by any stretch or checkers, but I see the appeal in such a game and why people like it.
Yeah. It's the mobile board was like super fascinating because we like the place where we do trivia is at a brewery. So they just have a bunch of picnic tables outside. And so like our crew, we just sit out there, and we literally just had the crew set out. And so some of us sat on one end and we played, and then people that weren't interested in playing were on the other end just talking. All right, cool. Everyone gets to have their thing. I wasn't aware that it was entirely like a 2-player game, but I'm always looking for good 2-player games with Lindsay. So really enjoyed that. My other game is Lorcana. I've just been playing it like crazy lately, everybody. I am sad because Lorcana has set championships, which are like basically your local game store. They allow you to like come in and like they'll host, so they'll have like special play mats that you get for winning, special cards you get for winning, all that. And so people travel and try to hit these like locally and get around. And my set championship that's local to us is the same weekend as USDGC. So I will not be participating in that one. But it's been fun building up cards. We're going to locals tonight, and we've got several people that are going to be coming to it. So looking forward to that. But that's not what we're here to discuss today. We're here to talk about a new game and a focus game for us, which is Raccoon Tycoon.
All right. I dropped off for a second, a little behind the scenes, but I'm back now, and I'm ready to discuss today's main game. We talk about games. The topic is games, the main game for this one. So Robbie and I, we talked through a lot of different games to talk about. And when I shot Robbie the text last week about, this game wasn't even on there. And as soon as he replied back, I was like, oh, it's a no-brainer. Because we had talked about this one. It had just fallen off my radar. Another one too, by the way, we'll talk about afterwards. I think there's another one we've talked about before that I want to do soon. So remind me of that, Robbie. Okay. But it wasn't in the text I sent you. So today we're talking about Raccoon Tycoon. A good chance you haven't heard about this game other than us. You haven't seen this game, is a fair statement. Robbie talked about it. I gave it to him for his birthday, I think. And we've had it for quite a while. So I'll go a little the background Raccoon Tycoon like we typically do, and then we'll break it down. So released in 2018, designed by Glenn Drover. What I like about Glenn Drover is he also designed a game called Mosaic, which is behind me, this massive box that eventually we'll play with Robbie. Awesome game. And after having played this, when you play Mosaic, you'll see this the same designer, same publisher, Forbidden Games. The box lists 2 to 5 players in 60 to 90 minutes. It's probably a little shorter. It can be a little shorter if you know how the game is. With 2 players, when Elizabeth and I played, it was like a 40-minute game. But as we discuss go deeper in the game, you can kind of dictate the length of that based on the actions you're taking and the in-game mechanisms. In Raccoon Tycoon, players try to produce the most valuable commodities in an ever-changing marketplace. They then can use those commodities to build towns, sell them at the best price, secure great profits, and those profits can be used to win auctions for the all-important railroads. The profits may also be used to buy powerful buildings that give the players power-ups or bonuses in production. Player with most points by owning the best buildings, towns, and railroads will win the game. We'll quickly go on a high level and then go deep. So the high level of the game is on each turn, you're going to do one of 5 actions, which is what makes this game great. There's 5 actions. You can produce. You have a card in which that has some items on the bottom. You hear us to use the term commodities, same thing as resources, but in the game there's 6 commodities. Commodities like wheat, iron, coal. You'll get 3 of the commodities listed on the bottom of the card, and then raise the market value of the commodities on the top of the card, which could be different things. You could take an iron, a coal, and a good, and you could raise the wheat and the wood. So that's one of your actions. You can sell a commodity. So later in the game, you can say, I'm going to sell all my coal, and whatever the market value is, I'm going to sell 5 coal and the market value is 4. Well, I'm going to get $20 for that coal. So that's how you get your money. The third action you can do is hold a railroad auction. There's always 2 face-up railroads out there. And if you're the active player, okay, I'm going to start an auction for this one, and I'm going to bid $4. And then you go around the board until everyone is passed, and whoever had the highest bid pays that amount of money. A little different in a 2-player game, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's the gist of that. The cool thing about this, and I forgot to put in the show notes, and we'll talk about it, but is that if you don't win the auction, you initiate it but don't win the auction, it's still your turn. Such a cool thing. Definitely go a little bit deeper on that later, but I love that. The 2 other things you can do is either purchase a building, which is always 4 face-up buildings, which will give you different bonuses for the game's abilities or in-game points. Or you can purchase a town. You purchase the building with money or purchase the town with commodities, i.e. the resources you have. The towns are points, and they have other combination points for it. So at the end of the game, whoever has the most points based on the towns and the railroads and the buildings wins the game.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong for the discussion of this, but on the before I'm asking a gameplay question to make sure we didn't play this wrong when we did it. So when you're looking at the goods cards, it's like there are 2 to 3 or even I guess sometimes there might be 4 like goods at the top. From how we understood it, when you increase, for every good you take, you increase the price of all of those options by whatever number there is represented up top, right?
No. So I will say what you do. And so here's a good card I'm holding up for you two folks. At the bottom, it shows the production. So if I choose to play this card, which you always have 3, and you could buy a building that lets you have 4 or 5, right? So these are private ones. So if I choose to produce, to start the game, I can only choose 3 of these. So I could choose 3 wheat or 2 wheat and a wood. And then it raises the price of the coal and the whatever the bottle is. I can't remember what the bottle's called. So
I think it's literally like luxury or something.
It's luxury. It's luxury.
That's actually what it's called. Yeah.
So when you produce, you're taking 2 to 3 to more of these items at the bottom, which may not match the top, and by pure coincidence, this one doesn't. Then you're raising the price of those at the top.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So if I take 2 resources from the bottom, it takes all 3 of those at the top, and they all go up by 2, right?
No, they just go up by what's on the card, unless I'm playing it wrong. It just goes by what's on the card. So you have to take 3 at the bottom. You're always taking 3. And then you maybe later on can take 4 or 5 in production.
Yeah. See, so how we interpreted the rule was when you, for however many resources you take from the bottom, whatever numbers are listed at the top, those increase for 1 for each resource you take.
Yeah. That I'm gonna tell you that's incorrect. Unfortunately, sorry. So so in the rules,
that would make sense then. Yeah.
Because in the rules it says but if that's the case, then you'd always go up by 3 because you're always taking 3. So this would be, which I could understand that because sometimes games would do that very thing. But I just happen to have the rules here, and it says you increase the commodity market price of the commodities shown in the price area by $1 for each item shown, for each icon. Yeah. So okay.
So that's why some of them, sometimes it's like there's 2 woods and a luxury on it. Yeah. And so that way, when you take your resources, you would increase them. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
So on principle, what you take from here does not affect that. If you play this card to produce, this is what's going to increase. You're increasing the cost or the value of the luxury and the coal in that card.
Gotcha.
But we we realized there were 2 rules we were doing wrong, which as we go into deeper level, that I'll point out that actually made the game even a little better or easier or quicker, if that even makes sense. And you may have got these rules right because I missed them. We were watching a how to play video before we played very quickly, and I was like, oh, is that right? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Okay. So it's interesting because there, I will say, like in interpreting this is how we played it. Is we did not say you had to take all the resources that you wanted.
Okay.
Because of the fact that we were increasing everything so exponentially, was sometimes you were looking and you were like, okay, I'm looking at Lindsay's hand and she has so much wood over there, but this card has 2 wood. So if I take, because I've like purchased buildings that let me take 5 resources now, if I take 5, I mean, that wood is going to be all the way jacked up.
Yeah.
And she could just sell and go crazy. So I kind of liked the strategic of like, you don't have to take all of them, but for every resource you took, like, it was an interesting balance. Now, granted, I've not played it standard. So
that way would definitely add lots, as you just described, a lot of strategy. That's not really as deep when compared to that, because that's multi-level strategy of like, oh, if I take this, it's this. If I take this, it's this. There's aspects of that in the game, but not to that point. Where if I take 2, it's going to go up 2. But if I take 3, it's going to go up 3. That's not there, and it adds strategy, and I'm glad it's not there because I like the simplicity of this game, the ease of the turns.
I think if you want to take it to the next level, it made it very interesting for us. Like it definitely made it not feel so single player solitaire that I'm just buying stuff and doing my thing and the other person can somewhat affect what I'm doing, but like not necessarily. So, in terms of setup there's a lot of components to this game. Yeah. Like in terms of, there's a lot of different bills. There's 6 different resources that all have a massive pile that you're like pulling out and separating. There's a bunch of buildings. There is, I would say one of the oddest setup pieces is the fact that based on player count, certain railroads are just not put in the game. Yep. Certain railroads are not put in the game. Certain town buildings are not put in, like there's several things that get pulled out of the game. So the game scales really well with a lot of people, which is really good. I definitely think the Teach is one of the most straightforward for as much complexity as this game could feel. Cognitive load wise, you're looking at it and it's like, wow, there is a lot that I'm trying to figure out here. Yeah. So I did like how fast the Teach, because like Lindsay was upstairs while I was learning the game. And then when she came down, I agree with what Jason has in our show notes. I think in like 5 minutes we were cooking. Like we were off to the races. Yep. It was very, very straightforward.
I totally agree. And you're right. You captured it correctly. I agree with the way you captured it, in that the cognitive load can be there, but the individual actions are very easy. It's especially when you understand the card. Like, okay, I put this card down, I get these, the price of this goes up. Now, if you add the load of the strategy of that, but the actual action is easy. I sell all my coal for the price that's listed right there. And that's the entire turn. All right. I buy a town because I turn in these things. That's my entire turn. I buy a building. I just turn in some money. That's my turn. And then I'm done. And like, you're already on to the next person. The auction is where it gets a little, where it's not hard, but the turn take a little bit longer for sure. But yeah, the setup, lots of pieces. So if you have them stored in individual bags, it's pretty easy to, because I've got, in the early days of board gaming, I didn't realize I should store all my individual pieces separately, and they're all on one bag, and from a plate, I had to separate them. We'll never do that again. I keep all my stuff separated. So the setup, the teardown's a little bit more, so I have to separate them all and put them up, but it's worth that extra 5 minutes I spend taking the game down, and then when I put it up the next time.
Yeah, I can completely agree. Theming wise, I'm a big theme guy. We know this to be true. The reason the theme is even on the discussion sheet is because I'm here for the theme. And I laugh because I realize my wife is the same way. So this also has an impact like on the person that I most commonly play with is theming. And I told Jason before we played this game, I was very nervous because we played a game years ago called Harbor. And Harbor feels very, very adjacent to what you're doing here in terms of, in Harbor, you are buying buildings. There is a shifting market that bounces around. And at the end of the game, whoever has the most points wins. Like, here we go. Like, and even to the silliness of the art in Harbor, this art, I wouldn't say is like inherent. It is silly theming wise, but it's not silly for like the joke of it trying to be silly. It's almost like they tried to make it really serious looking, knowing that it was going to come off as goofy. Yeah. Like, I don't know how to describe the
it's
the
right
animals
because
anywhere other than that.
Yeah, because we haven't talked about it, but in the animals, like for our YouTube folks, you can see there's a card. This is a railroad card. So there's 4 different Tycoon pictures for the Tycoon. This is an expansion thing. Jackrabbit is actually the Dice Tower expansion, or not expansion. It's not expansion, but it's their promo cards. Here's one called Top Dog, right? Theoretically, there's the folks who are on the railroad that you're buying the railroad from. So while it doesn't match an animal, an anthropomorphic animal thing, the theme of being someone who is buying a stock market type game, buying and selling goods, using those goods to not necessarily buy towns, but invest in towns to grow towns, but you are using money to buy railroads. It's not a purely pasted on theme, and you can make other things. But even for me as a non-theme guy, if you're a theme person, you can see the extrapolation of it's a stock market game. It's an economy game, a stock market game, buying, selling goods, using those things to buy other things. So it makes sense within there. And like I said, it's some people call it silly, but it's not silly to be silly. It's silly to be like artistic and kind of funny on the nose. Like, yeah, this is a raccoon and this is a dog and this is a bear who are doing this, but it could just be a human in that same picture. It's just fun because it's fun in a good way.
Yeah. I think because of the fact that Raccoon Tycoon rhymes, like we have that beauty to it, and they were like, that'll be catchy and snappy in itself. And it's like, people love cute, fun, dressed up animals. So that will help sell the game to some. And I definitely think if you like that, like if that theme attracts you at all, you're going to love this game. Yeah. Like the theme certainly doesn't take away from the game, but as someone who like isn't really interested in that theme, it didn't add anything to it either. So and I'm fine with that. I am fine with the theme going completely neutral and not like distracting me with, oh, you just really tried to force that theme in there. Gameplay length, Jason, how many of you ever? I want you to talk about the game length because I've only personally played it at 2. Yeah. But I've watched gameplay of 4, and the gameplay that I watched of 4, it took them about an hour and 10 minutes of actual game time for 4 people. How many of you played this at?
I've played it at all player counts actually. Now that we played it at 2, I played it at 2, 3, 4, and 5. In all, like, what's funny is I've only played this game 5 times. I thought I played it way more, and it'll come and talk about it later. But I was like, I thought I played this thing a ton. Well, apparently I haven't. I played it a total 5 times. When Elizabeth and I played it the other night, it's the first time ever at 2. But what I would say is that I would think the game length it's if you play with folks who kind of struggle with analysis paralysis, it will slow them down. It's like, well, do I produce now and get some goods, or do I sell goods? Do I want to produce or do I want to sell? The turns themselves are incredibly I cannot emphasize how lightning fast the turn is once you decide. I will come back to that, and I'm going to say that the Dice Tower, let's say, quick, snappy turns. 4 of these 5 things are quick, snappy turns. I'm going to get some goods, and good prices go up. And that's it. Like, you're literally going to hand me some goods, and now it's the next person's turn. And it's the next person's turn. I'm going to buy a building. I turn in money, I get a building. I turn in goods, I get a town. Or I sell goods, and I get money, right? 4 of the 5 turns are literally like 5-10 seconds at most. That's a very quick turn. Now, when you do the auction in a non-2 player game, it can just keep going and going. 4, 5, 6. So it can take time to make I want to raise it to 8 now. So the auctions, and then if you don't win the auction, I can start another auction immediately, and then it's okay. So that I've been in games where people did multiple auctions on their turn alone. So while the game length didn't feel long, those turns felt long. So that's a long way of coming around and say I've never felt like this game was too long. If you play with anybody with AP, almost any game you play is going to feel longer because their turns are taking way longer than they should. But this is a game that, because everybody's turn is so fast and it comes back to you and your turn is so fast, I feel like you're almost always engaged when they're going. I think a 4-player game is probably an appropriate amount. 5-player, if everybody plays at a good pace, it's probably an hour and 10, hour and 20 minutes. But AP people, it's going to be an hour and a half or more. 2 people, I don't like the 2-player version. I like the other player versions better because of the auction, because it entirely changes the strategy. Robbie and I were texting this. So like in a 3 or more player game, that auction just goes and goes and goes till everyone passes. In a 2-player game, whoever initiates the auction gets 1 bid. It's their initial bid. And then the person they're playing with either has to raise it or pass, and then it's done. So it doesn't make the game bad. It's just an entirely different dynamic. Because the first couple of times I did with Liv, was like, okay, I'm going to bid 7. She goes, 8? And she just took and then later I'm like, okay, I'm going to bid 50. You know, I had to jack my price up really fast to understand, oh, well, it's very interesting to do that. Whereas when you're bidding with other people, rarely are you going to start that high in a multiplayer game. You're going to see if you're able to get something low or force people to suss out their money, which may extend the game length. That was a lot of words to say. I think the game length I think the game length time is probably appropriate to say 60 to 90 minutes, probably less than 60. If you're playing with, even 3 people go less than 60 if they go through their auctions and towns real quick. What we haven't said yet was what initiates the end of the game is once the last town is purchased or the last train is purchased, everyone gets the same amount of turns. So you have a starting player in the game who just takes the very first turn. And that's the only time the starting player really matters. You continue to go in clockwise order, but just to make sure everybody gets the equal amount of turns. So you could have a game where people are producing and selling a lot and not buying a lot of trains or towns, and the game will go longer. Or you could have people just blitzing through those railroads and towns, and the game goes faster. I kind of like that. I kind of like you dictating the length. Sometimes games with 5 rounds, 8 rounds, 9 rounds are good because you know when the end is and you can plan appropriately. But sometimes I like when you're kind of racing, right? Who's going to run through the trains first? Who's going to run through that? Not everybody likes that because they may not have the right engine built up to stay with this. And to me, in Raccoon Tycoon, you don't have that worry because you can produce and get some money to help with that speed of the race to get those things.
Yeah, I completely like on the speed of it. So we've played it twice with like trying to get a feel for it. Because truly the first time we played it, we kind of got to the end and looked at each other like, oh, it's over.
Yeah.
Like it really did sneak up on you. Like even it wasn't like, oh man, like that just came out of nowhere. Right. It was just like, oh, it's already over. So we just ran it back. Like, here we go. And the first time that we played, we both went for, because we played a lot of Machikoro at our house. And so we love Machikoro for like, the game ends in Machikoro when you build your big buildings. But we kind of love the rush of like, let's just buy a ton of small buildings.
Yeah.
So that every time the dice hit, you're going crazy. And in Raccoon Tycoon, there are buildings that you can purchase that buff up sort of your playability.
Yeah.
Like when you take a wood, you can take an extra wood, or there's a storage warehouse where now your maximum amount of goods you can hold is increased, and commodities is increased. So you can do like, there's so many things that you can kind of buff up. And there's also buildings that kind of give you in-game scoring bonuses and things like that. So, Lindsay and I, the first time we played, I feel like we almost ran out of buildings, like because we were just buying so many things. And it was a 2-player game. Yeah. So like we both looked at our boards and felt like we were like, we truly were tycoons. So we kind of leaned into the thing a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And then Lindsay started buying, investing in the towns. And I was like, oh no, I got to catch up. So then I started like, and then we had so much stuff that we were just like, on her turn, she bought a town. On my turn, I bought the next one. On her turn, she bought a town. I bought the next. Yeah. And we did that for like 4 turns in a row because we just had so much stuff.
Yeah.
Which was super fun, but it definitely like sneaks, like you said, it did that. So then the next time, Lindsay was like, I'm going to do the same thing. And I tried to embrace that strategy of like, she's going to try to get developed. What if I just blitz? Like, what if I truly just try to go crazy? And I lost because I brought the end of the game scoring, and she, sure enough, just had more stuff. So I'll talk a little bit about how that first game ended, because that 2-player strategy on the auctions, I think is so cool. Now, having not experienced it, I love a good auction. I love that, like, that edge of interacting with players and trying to push it all. But for a game that has such varied actions, I do love how none of the actions overpower one another. I think in certain games you can have, if there's only 5 simple actions, one of them feels like I have to be doing this every other turn. Like for instance, when I think of Stone Age that we've covered here on the thing before, as a newer player to Stone Age, I felt so nervous to feed my families. Like I felt like I was never had enough food.
Right.
Whereas for you and Elizabeth, who were much more adept at playing that game, you knew I can kind of do the bare minimum and still get my family fed and rack up so many more points elsewhere. Yeah. So whereas I'm like overvaluing one of the actions in that game, here you kind of naturally work through all 5, which I thought like makes it really fun for the strategic side, because there isn't some very obvious strategy to win this game.
Yeah, I agree. I like the way you capture that with that. None of them are overpowering, because in so many games, even games I love, there are ones that are definitely the ones you got to hit and go deep on. Well, there's none in this game. If there's even one you could go if you play enough strategy, is not initiating auctions, but you can still win a bunch of auctions, right? So you're still participating in that action, because you have to do all these actions in this game. You have to produce, and you have to sell because you got to get money. You could maybe avoid buildings, but you're going to realize that they're not OP. But if you don't do buildings, people are going to pull away from you because you're going to have all these additional abilities. And I agree with that. Like when Elizabeth and I played, I went heavy in buildings because I knew it was going to be a race. It could be a race, and we can dictate how fast this game goes or not. And so like I ended up having, I think, 9 or 10 buildings, and she had 4. But I got a building that was like every building's worth 1 more point. Because every building is just worth a flat out point at the end of the game. And then I had a building that said every building is worth +1. So I had 18 points alone. I had 18 points, I had 9 buildings. I had 18 points alone just in buildings where Elizabeth had 4, right? And so I love there's no specific thing. You could say go deep in railroads, because railroads become exponentially better. So if you get 1 of top dog, and each of them are slightly different, it's worth 4 points. If you get 2 top dogs, it's 9. If you get 3, it's 15. If you get 4, it's 23. But it's hard to get all 4. But if you get 1 of each, maybe that's not bad. If you go deep in 1, it means you may not have the money to go deep in something else. So I like that none of them are specific. Like you said, none of them are specifically OP, because towns have a flat rate score, but if you have a railroad, then it gives you more points. The buildings are all worth 1, but then some of the buildings give you additional ones. I had one that was +1 point for every town as well, where Elizabeth had me on more railroads earlier because I didn't comprehend the better auction mechanism for a 2-player game versus something else. Because in a regular game, I will always have a chance to raise the bid again. When a 2-player game, I got 1 shot. If I initiate that auction, I got 1 shot. And if I don't bid right, I'm going to lose this auction. So it's not bad. It's just different. And it totally changes that one single aspect of the game. But I like the fact that no single action overpowers anything else. And you can't totally avoid one thing. You're going to have to do something in everything to do well. Because if you totally avoid buildings, then everyone else is going to have these little bitty bonuses for you. And here I'll talk about a little bit of strategy that I didn't realize we played wrong. So in the game, as we talked earlier, if you have a card, like say this card right here produces 3 wheat and a wood, the card does. I can only take 3 of these unless I have a building that lets me produce 4 or maybe produce 5, because some of these have 5. There are also buildings you can buy that are +1 production in coal. So if I have this in front of me and I play this, I choose 3 of these, but I still get the coal. So now I got 4 things. We didn't play it that way until last night or 2 nights ago. We played this only came in effect if you were actually taking coal. And so and so I'm like, once I read the rules, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. I could see how I missed that, but this building's only good if you're using a coal card. But what if you don't get a lot of coal cards? Well, it's not that great. And so, but every time you produce, does not matter what's on there, you get 3 there. And you can also do this. Now, if you have more than 1 production building, you can only choose 1 of those buildings, because all of the basic resources, like wheat has it as well. So if I have both these in front of me and I use this card to produce, I can only choose 1 of these. But I could technically get 3 wheat from here and use this building and just say verbally, hey, I'm going to produce from wheat, but you can't produce from coal and wheat. That was a little one we realized we were doing wrong until I saw someone else do a how to play. And I'm like, oh, wow. That makes much more sense now.
Yeah. And remind me, I could be wrong on this because you set it up more recently than me. When you set up in 2-player, at least, you don't actually put out all 6 of those resource buildings.
Correct. It's only 4.
I think you only pick like 4.
4, yeah.
So we literally I sprinted to the too expensive, like luxury and whatever the one is right below luxury. We had those two. So I sprinted. Those were the first two buildings I bought. Yeah. Like I went right to them, and it was every time I produced, I was just, and so for me, I went crazy. I love that you talked about like, you can kind of like slough off. You can't really afford to slough off some of the actions.
Right.
But I didn't start a railroad bid the whole game.
Yeah.
The first time, because every time I was going to start a railroad bid, I just sold my luxury and got cash, so that when Lindsay wanted to start a bid, I was like, yeah, I'll go ahead and go up one. Thank you for doing that. And then if she wanted to go again, I was still sitting on cash and working through. So it definitely made and I honestly, I don't think I would adjust that if I was playing with multiple people, because of I'm going to get a chance to get in on this railroad and have an opportunity to do the same. So it's the bidding and I've said this in other games, I am notoriously an overbidder. You can sucker me into any game that there's an auction. I will just eat the game away for spending an absurd amount of money on auctions just to secure what I think is valuable. Yeah. I've lost more games of Five Tribes than I care to mention because I overbid, because the coins are money or are victory points at that game. But I love that push your luck aspect of it when it comes to just so many different things. I'm really banking on wood right now. Like I'm gathering wood, I'm collecting wood, and I decide to produce and get more wood my turn. Well, two people right after me see that I've stacked up on wood, so they just sell wood. They sell wood, and then all of a sudden the value drops on that dramatically. And now I have to either continue to get more wood to try to raise that price again, or like it. I love that element to it for So Simple. I love the rush of a push your luck. And it really is about one of the only ways that you interact with other players on the board. So I think that's a really fun. You could, if you're not a deep strategy person, you could think that this game has such minimal interaction with other people.
Yep. And
to some people, that's a plus.
Right.
I love that you can subtly influence the whole other parts of the board.
Yep. Definitely. You wouldn't think traditionally, and you just mentioned the push your luck, you wouldn't think it's a traditional push your luck game like rolling die or something, but you're pushing your luck, as you just said, when you want to sell. If I'm hanging on to my wood a little much to kind of raise it a little bit more. One thing I'll highlight too, another rules clarification we realized was, so I haven't said this yet, but of those commodities you can only have 10 in your hand at any time. But for every building you have, it raises that by 1. And there's also a building that says you can hold 3 more. We played it that you had to have that building that was +3 to have more than 10 commodities, but it's actually 1 for every building. So we were limiting how many commodities we could have. I was like, that changes it. When you have 9 buildings, I can have 19 and then a building that allows me to have 3 more. So I can own 22 of those things, right? So that, again, makes the game even better. That little bitty rule that I missed makes the game better. It's always fun to find a rule I missed that like, oh, wow, the game is so much better with that. A game I already liked just got better because I misplayed a rule. Yeah. And so that,
dude, that would be so infuriating. Yeah. You're like, I mean, it's just a like when I was saying even of like, we bought a town and then she bought a town and then I bought a town and then she bought a town. You're like,
yeah.
At the end of the game, that's impossible. Like you have to have the perfect resource.
Right, exactly. Like, and that's where it's the fun. Another aspect of strategy, and you kind of talked about it, but it's that push your luck mechanism is also based on which buildings you're willing to take to see what they're going to do, right? To see, are they going to add up to this game? I had one that was great. Elizabeth and I both bought ones that turned out fantastic for each of us. She ended up winning the game by 4 points, and she thought she had lost it. I was like, no, you got this right here. And it was like 63-59. Super tight game, which I felt she had it because she had a good railroad game strong early. But I had a building that I could raise the price of any commodity $3 before I sold. So that's just fantastic. I mean, and if I have 5 commodities, I just made myself $15 more because of that, right? So you could use that. I use that over and over. She had one that she could sell 2 commodities. How awesome is that? The sale, and she got a lot of money going big for sure. I love that aspect of it, that the buildings give you these little bitty bonuses, and you can sleep on the buildings if you don't pay attention, but you play it more, you're going to realize I'm not going to sleep on buildings anymore. Another cool thing that we have not mentioned is your money always stays hidden. So many games, there's information that's always public. Well, your money is hidden because that drives you willing to push your luck. Okay, I don't know. Did Robbie already spend his $100 he got? I didn't pay attention to that auction. I didn't pay attention to the building. How much money does he have? Do I want to start this? Do I want to raise wood again? Or is he going to just drop wood very fast and now my 5 woods aren't worth anything, right? Again, there's little bits of that push your luck on there. And the fact that I don't know how much money Robbie has, it comes into my, okay, am I going to watch you closely or judge push it and go for it? Eliz was that way. She, at the very end of the game, did it ended up being the difference in the game. She ended up she started an auction for something and she just started off at $100. Because at the end of the game, money's not worth anything. So that's great, right? You don't need ending the game with any money is irrelevant, but you may need the money at the very end. And I was like, pass. Cause she didn't know at the time, but I had like $22, right? She had like $300 and I had like 22, but she had to throw that auction out there at 100 just to make sure. Cause she didn't know how much money I had. And so I love that level of strategy, especially in 4 or 5 player, there's just no way, right? But in 2 player, if you really want to, you could crunch through the number. Okay. She just sold commodities for 40 and she's bought that for 30. And Elizabeth did that early cause I had bought 2 buildings early and she knew I had no money because she had seen that. She goes, I'm going to start an auction for this railroad for $4. And I didn't have any money. So, cause she knew it. Thank you. $4. Like she got 2 railroads just because I had no money to bid. Again, fun strategy, fun stuff for sure.
Yeah. That is where I think I would struggle with this game with multiple people is because I 100% number crunched Lindsay the whole time. I was like, how much did you just sell that for? She was like $22. And I was like, okay. So she's at 36. Sick. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And how I ended up winning the first game is I talked her into starting a bid. There were 3 railroads. There was more than 3 railroads, but I knew there was like 1 town left that I could purchase on my turn. Like I was going to get that. She didn't have the resources for it. So she was going to get 1 extra turn essentially.
Yeah.
So I bought the town, force her for the last one. And I'm like, babe, you got to get as much points as you possibly can. I've got you beat right now. I know I do. Thinking I had way more of a cushion than I actually did. Didn't realize it. Misplay on me for points. And I knew how much money she had. And I was sitting on a fat stack of cash. And I was like, railroads seem like one of the best ways to go about this. So she was like, okay, I'm going to start a bid on this railroad. I'm going to do here. And I was like, sick. And then I just raised the price. Boom. I take that railroad from her. She did it again.
Yep.
I bought the second railroad. And the whole time I literally in my hands had separated and put in my lap the amount of money she had in her hand plus 1. So I knew as long as I don't touch that stack of cash, she cannot outbid me on a railroad.
Yep.
And so she finishes and she after the second railroad I stole from her, she was like, I'm just handing you points. I'm going to buy this building and I'm done. It's like, all right, cool. That works.
That is funny.
And and it ended up those 2 railroads being what pushed me barely over the win for her.
Yeah.
But it's with 5 people, that would be so hard to keep track of. So the replayability, we've been going for a while, so I want to touch high points on the way out, but I replayability so high because of exactly what, you've heard all the things we're talking about. There is so much joy and fun memory in having this game because there is that rush every single time of pushing your luck. What are you going to do? Jason mentioned the building that he had of raising the prices. And then there was another building where you sell 2. I had both of them. So it was that's how I had fat stacks of cash was because Lindsay let me get both of them. That didn't happen the second game for sure. There was no way that was going to go down. So but sometimes even if you see, that would be a bummer for them to have it, you may be in a situation Jason had where there's no money. Yeah. You just don't have the money to stop them from getting that. So it's so fun in terms of the variance that can happen on each side. Really, really enjoyed it. And the components, amazing. I actually asked Jason, did you send me a deluxe version? Like, because the components were so nice.
Were your components?
What are some high points on the way out?
Yeah,
were
your components
like solid components?
Were yours wood, or were they still cardboard, but just like really nice cardboard?
I'm pretty sure they're wood.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure that
there's levels. Yeah. I didn't realize I sent you that one when I bought it, because there's the one I originally had was just cardboard, which was still nice, but it's just all cardboard. And then I ended up, because I liked it, ended up getting the Super Deluxe Kickstarter resold from someone else. So I have like even nicer ones. And I think there's a mid-level, because mine are actually shaped by like wheat and shaped like coal and stuff.
That's sick.
And so, yeah, I like the components for sure. The production is amazing. The artwork is great. The artwork is different from card to card. It's very clean. I've been holding this card up for the production. The cards, different style of artwork almost when you look at the Railroad Tycoons, and even the buildings, essentially, not buildings, the towns. Where are they at? Oh, no. The towns, essentially, here's right here, kind of looks almost like a Thomas Kincaid painting. For those who know Thomas Kincaid, I mean, look at that right there. I mean, there's different styles of artwork, but they all balance each other off for sure. I want to say, go back to replayability real quick. One of the high points for me, and we talked about it when we were texting, is that even if this game takes an hour and a half, the turns are so quick, it didn't feel like an hour and a half. And it feels like, because I know the game doesn't feel long, it's a game I'm okay with getting to the table, even though I haven't gotten to the table much, because every turn feels so quick. I get to do so much. I can do this, it goes back to me in 2 minutes. I get to do something else. And then I get to do something else. And then I get to do something else. And so, because I get to do so much within those 5 turns, the replayability is high. And even if the game is long, it doesn't feel like it's a long game the way some other games can feel when they take on to that length, for sure.
Yeah, Jason, I'll let you, if you want to jump into cookie scale.
Yeah, for sure.
My dogs are
no worries.
greeting someone at the front door, I guess.
I'll have one more thing. The one downside is not the right term, right? The price right now, the regular full price is $40. You can find the retail version at $20 to $25 throughout the year. I see it routinely at $20 to $25. At $40, if you like auction style games, is easy. $40 is easy money well spent. But if it's a game you're adding to collection to play here and there, maybe watch for it to be on sale, because I've seen it on sale so many times at $20 to $25. Now, I feel like I have praised this game the entire time, haven't said anything negative about it, and it's clear that I really like this game. So my cookie rating may be a shocker, because when I was texting Robbie, I was like, it was a game that will never leave. I have no intention of it ever leaving my collection, but if I don't play it for 3 years, I won't lose an ounce of sleep on this. I love it when it comes out, but it's not necessarily one towards the top of my list that I think about bringing out to play, right? And so my rating is actually going to be a sugar cookie. Not a bad thing by any stretch. But it's always good. In the analogy of a sugar cookie, to me, a good sugar cookie is always good, and I'm always happy when I eat a good sugar cookie. That's the way Raccoon Tycoon is for me. It's been, I think I texted Robbie, it's been almost 3 years since I played it. Well, we went 3 years without playing. We played last year. It's been another year. And I'm like, oh, wow, I can't believe it's been this long. But I still remember those plays because it's so quick, because it's so snappy. It's so fun. And it's one that I have no reason to ever get rid of. Unless for some insane reason it goes really high on eBay and I really need the money, I won't get rid of this game, because it's always one I'll pull out and play, a la Five Tribes. Robbie used this, and I may steal some of his stuff. When we were texting, he's talked about Five Tribes. It's like, that's the perfect analogy. I rate Five Tribes higher, but the principle is the same. I don't think too much about getting Five Tribes out, but I love Five Tribes whenever I play it. So it's sugar cookie for me.
Yeah, that is shocking. Jason even gave me a prep that he was like, it's going to be low. And I was like, okay. So I expected a little more critique throughout this, but I get it. I get it for that reason of like, it's simplistic enough that it's not like, oh, this mechanic just draws me back in. Like, yep. Five Tribes has the mechanic of the Mancala effect, yep, where you're spreading it out. So like, if we will do Five Tribes as a game on here one day, but like, I can almost guarantee that statement is going to come out of my co-host of like, oh yeah, unlike Raccoon, there's just such a
yeah,
unique mechanic in it that you miss that mechanic. There's nothing that Raccoon Tycoon, that's not true. I think that one mechanic that Raccoon Tycoon does that's really cool is that idea of I take a good and it adjusts the market. Like it adjusts multiple things on the market, because Harbor, when you do harbor, you like take, but it adjusts what you spent. And so it's always directly connected to what you're spending that's moving it around. Whereas I like the idea of, okay, I'm looking at the cards I have in my hand, and I can, if I know that I want to sell luxury next turn, okay, these goods may not be, these commodities may not be what I want, but it does boost luxury for me to sell next turn, so I can plan accordingly. Yeah. I think that is a really, really cool function of the game. For me, it is a chocolate chip. Like it's up there because of the fact that I'm not going to have a bad experience playing this game ever. And because of that, I would be really excited to bring people to the table to show them this game. It would not be one that I feel like if I was introducing people, like if I was meeting people that you've never played anything beyond the Monopolies and the Saris of the world, I'm not putting Raccoon Tycoon on the table for them.
Yep.
But if we've played a Carcassonne, if we've played a Catan, if we played any other, like if we played a Cascadia, for instance,
yep,
would be a great game to introduce people who are brand new to it. Here we go. This would be game night number 2 to me. Like this very easily slots into a second game night. You're looking for a little more depth. Like this would be super, super fun. And once again, theming wise, the theme doesn't really detract from it. But if I think of when I was up there visiting, and I remember Raccoon Tycoon coming up, y'all had just played it. And one of Elizabeth's coworkers mentioning, you're telling me there's a game that has raccoon in the title, right, and we haven't played it. Like there's going to be certain people out there that the theme really connects with. And so for that reason, it's super high for me. But like Jason, if I didn't play this game for a year, I wouldn't look back and be like, oh man, I've really got to get Raccoon Tycoon back to the table. But I'm going to, as soon as I see that game on the table again, I'm going to have the joy and the memory of great play experiences that just flood back to it. So I'm going to rate it pretty high. And once again, I think it comes from just a number of games in my collection versus number of games in Jason's collection. We could both actually probably feel about the exact same way of our enjoyment of the game. There's just a lot more games in your game night number 2 slot, I feel like, than I may have in mine.
Yep. Great analogy.
So, Jason, any final thoughts as we wrap it up?
No, I'm glad we were able to talk about it because when you and I started the podcast a little over a year ago, Raccoon Tycoon wasn't even on my list. And the fact that we're talking about it now just shows the growth that we have and the dynamics we have in our discussion about the games that we play. And I'm glad we do it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm here for it, guys. Like it is every game can't be a double doozy. And we never want to have a game where it's like, oh, it's a double oatmeal raisin type deal. But even if we did, like, I think that there will be a day eventually where we just hit a game that we know we need to discuss and we know we need to go about it. And it's going to be a double oatmeal raisin. Yeah. And you know what? That's going to be fine. Like that once again, because some people love an oatmeal raisin. It's not going to be our flavor. But even as we develop as Jason and I know, there are games that Jason and I, our Venn diagram of board games that we love, our Venn diagrams cross over perfectly on those. And then our Venn diagrams are also pretty large. Like there are games that Jason's going to love that I'm going to be like, it's fine. And then on the other side, we've already had some of them here on the podcast already. And I think it just makes it, I like that it's an honest review that we're doing. I'll say that, Jason. I like that we said nothing but positive things about the game, a couple holdbacks, and then it's like, hey, it still is okay on my list. Like, totally here for it.
Cool.
So, y'all, thank you for tuning in. We will see you on. Jason's got me curious because he said at the very beginning of his podcast, of like, oh, there's a game that we want to discuss, and we've got one more till our next list. So I'll go ahead and throw this out here because Jason and I actually haven't even discussed what we want to do for list numbers, like for episode 30 yet. So if you guys have lists, ideas, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I have something that I'm going to. I think episode 31, I want to try to implement on the podcast. So I'm going to go ahead and tease that here. I have to run it by Jason first, but know that we may be pushing people to the comment sections even more in future episodes. So excited for it. But Jason,
let's go.
We'll see him next week.
See ya.
2 weeks.
Y'all. 2 weeks. Whatever. See ya.